What is up, seekers? Aaron here. Tatanka Enterprises, blah, 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 blah. Hello. How are you today? I'm here with you again for another conscious thought. This one a little more spiritual. They're on core levels basically the same. Because they do coincide with each other and they do eventually lead to, almost, if not pretty much the same thing in my understanding. Like I've said quite a few times, I am not a guru. I'm not some crazy mystical teacher, some crazy mystical ascended being of like greatness. I'm just a dude going through life and having extraordinarily awesome situations and circumstances present themselves that I'm following through with the teaching, assistance, and help from others. And holy crap, has this been really fun. This is basically week 2 of all of this, and here I am still loving it, and I don't see it stopping anytime soon. I've got my little note card of topics and ideas, and they come to me so frequently that I'm confident in this, and I'm sure that this is helping at least one person out there, and that's all it takes. That's all that matters. That's worth the effort. If those of us on this journey are able to help one person, then that's all it takes. So today, I'm talking about another interesting conversation with my wife and sister. And that is not that my wife and sister are the same person, but my wife and separately my sister. Same conversation. Okay. And that is receiving spiritual communication. Most of us have had it happen. And a lot of people don't even realize it's what's happening. There's a lot of different forms of communication we can receive. It can be audio. We can just hear something. It can be your ears ringing. It can be visual. You can have visualizations. You can just have random downloads of thoughts, of visuals, of situations, of noises. And it can be what happened to me initially was I would be... The first one that sticks out to me is when I was in North Carolina and I was working on the bodywork on a car. And there was music playing. You know, we're in a shop. There's always music playing. And one particular phrase in a song that was playing jumped out at me and stood out. There was nothing before, nothing after. I wasn't actively paying attention to the song. It was just this one phrase that stood out. And that phrase was along the lines of, "You don't belong here, but I can't tell you why yet." It was a popular song, and I believe it was even on the radio. I don't think, I could be mistaken there, but it was a song that was just on the radio. I had no idea it was playing. Those lyrics just shot right into my head, and I heard just that, and then it was back to the background noise immediately after as I'm sitting there realizing that, like, this just happened. I'm very connected and personal with music. I've been listening. I was raised, listening to music all the time. My family encouraged the arts. And from a young age, I was in orchestra. I got a guitar very young. I was in band and orchestra in high school. My sister was in orchestra. My older sisters were in arts. And I don't want to say music and be wrong, but I could be mistaken. So music has always been very important in our family. It's a very core thing like a core held belief, and I'll kind of touch on this later in this episode. But music is very important to us, and we believe that there's a lot of power in music, and it changes lives, changes thoughts, changes feelings. I mean, music does a lot of great things, and it is very, 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 very powerful. There's a lot of potential in music to make changes and help. And so just that happening to me was pretty huge. And that was one of the earliest ones. And now that I've been along this journey for, late January, so almost a year, I've come to the realization that I may be somewhat clairaudient, where I get the ear ringings and audio communication. But I also personally receive visualizations. I haven't gotten touch or anything like that, but it's very much an audio and physical, like metaphysical stimulation. I'm confident that my wife and I initiated a slight channeling session where I was receiving communication from something higher, and I actually felt a lot in my crown and third eye chakras. There's a lot of sensations in there. Well, when it comes to when you're receiving a communication, one of the biggest things you want to be concerned about is the source of energy, is that energy source coming to you of the polarity that you want to pursue, whether positive or negative. And if you're familiar with the raw material, they speak in that book how strong Carla's Christian beliefs were. And she always challenged any communication with something along the lines of, like, do you come to speak only truths in the name of, our Father, Jesus Christ, whatever it may have. I don't remember exactly it may have been, but she was very, very firm in that belief of hers. And because she was so firm in that belief, it allowed her to get confirmation that it was positive source coming to communicate. Me personally, I'm so attached to Rawls communication and the law of one and those ideologies that's my core belief that I challenge these communications with. It really kind of depends on my mood at the time, but usually it's along the lines of, like, do you come to communicate as a positive entity, bringing only positive communications in accordance to the law of one? And then you move on from there. The concern with that is negative entities are out to, in essence, contain and control and manipulate, but to polarize up the densities. One can't infringe on free will, both negative and positive, because that's just a core part of the law of one is free will. So these entities, negative and positive, they just all want to come down and express their knowledge and try to help others. When it comes to negative, they want to serve themselves, which in a roundabout way is serving others, because we're all one. And won't infringe on your free will to get you to follow them, because it'll be a choice that you make to follow them. And that's where a lot of the interesting stuff comes in. I would recommend, if you're into any of this at all, you can check out our podcast. It's The Rawcast. It's on all platforms. YouTube, Spotify, Apple, iTunes, all the Android podcasts. It's on Odyssey. It's everywhere. And it's amazing material. But you want to make sure that the communication you're receiving is of the polarity that you want to pursue in this life, whether negative or positive. There's no right and wrong here. It's just whatever you feel that you're called to do. And for anyone worried about that, boiled down at the end of it all, everyone reverts back to positive anyways. That's the only way you can ascend back to source. So the end game always ends in positivity. So there's really never anything to worry about. It's really coming down, living and sharing love and light, being the best you that you can be, and helping in the best way that you feel you can. So it can be a deeply held religious belief, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be spiritual in nature. Like Carla's, it was Christian in nature. Very deeply held religious belief. And if they coincide with that with you, they will tell you. Because they can't lie. Well, they can, but they don't. Because that's deception. That's going against free will. So that's part of the, you have that deeply held belief, and you confirm with that deeply held belief with a challenge to ensure that the communication you're receiving is from a source that you mingle with. It's what you want. And one of the interesting and big things to be prepared for in this is these entities are disconnected from third density experience. So they've removed ego. That's a huge part of human experience, is the ego coming out of second and third density. Well, not really second, but third. And then going into fourth is the removal of the ego. Not really removal, but acceptance and transmutation of the ego. And the shadow. They're kind of one and the same, really. And with that being said, there are some answers that you may receive from this source that are for your better good, for the path that is a path. They're all options. Like, it's not free will infringement by offering you options that are more focused on high, so outside of third density. So these answers may not be what you want to hear, but they are likely what you need to hear. You get what I'm saying? Hard truths, things that may not sit well with you in the moment because of ego and shadow self, but are just bluntly, usually for me it's quite blunt, saying this is a direction you can go that has a high likelihood of providing you a pathway to your soul purpose. The reason that we chose to come back here, or chose to come here to begin with. And that has happened to me quite a few times. Some of you may know that my wife and I are in an interesting situation that started last October. Not last October. It's 2022. October 2020. We came back home January 2021 because of those issues. And there was a point where I was over it. In my perception at that time, the marriage had failed. We had ruined and completely hurt each other so much beyond the point of any sort of repair. That was a lot of the the lowest of low, and the suicide and all that came in. And the beginning of this journey was thanks to my good buddy Mac. And the feelings, thoughts, and emotions I had during all that at first were pretty rough. But they also came down to feeling good, because like I can just move on from that, whatever. I had made a Tinder account. I had met a few gals. And I met one that I kept in touch with for months. And we had there's a lot of synchronicities between us. We became very, very good friends. And I started trying to initiating some romance between us. And it seemed like a shared interest at first. But at the same time, I kept digging deeper and deeper into a spiritual life. And at that time, it seemed pretty clear to me that that was not what my wife wanted. I was wrong. I was very wrong. But that's where I was on a conscious level at that point. Was that was, ooh, I'm sorry, I kicked you. That was what I was getting. So things were going along months later, and I'm sitting here. I'm having a lot of struggle and strife through this because of, I got to fix this now. You know, everything that I was receiving, a lot of it was just not making sense. And I was still going through my practices, you know, confirming positive source and all of that. And that also has a lot to do with your environment as well. So make sure your environment is cleansed, or you're providing the environment for the polarity you want to receive. And it just came down to the point where what I was doing was actually hurting myself more than growing myself. Because it was clear that the path I thought I needed to go down was not the path that I did need to go down. And I received, now it's reached over 10 different communications. 2 of which initiated by me. All the others just situations that happened. Saying, it's better for you to stay with your wife. That is your highest and best path. That is where the most catalyst will come from. That is where the most healing will come from. That is where the most polarity will come from. And I'm working on unplugging as much as possible from ego and shadow by going through the healing practices and the transmutation part that comes from that. And so I've come down to just focusing as much as possible on my eternity over this life. And it's difficult. I mean, I work on it daily. And there was very clear messaging that I needed to disconnect from the other woman. Our purpose for each other, like why we had met and all of that was done. We are not really of no benefit to each other, but we have no higher purpose to continue to be together in any sense at this time. And that hurt, because I had grown very, very, very strong feelings for this girl, and I still feel like there was some on the other end there from her, just based on our communication. And I said, okay, if that's, eventually I came down to, okay, if that's what I got to do, this is what I'm going to do. And the moment of bringing that up to her and not coming out, but coming up and saying, hey, like, I think it's time I gotta go, was shockingly smooth. And the third density pain from that was impressively short. That, for me, said the messaging you received is accurate. This is going to be good for you. Not a message I wanted to hear. I did not want to hear that it's better to stay with my wife at the time. I did not want to hear that it's better to separate from where I'm finding all this love and joy and happiness in this new woman. I did not want to hear any of that, but I did. And it was a confirmed, guaranteed positive source. And I said, all right, this is what I got to do. I went through all of that. I got the messaging that this was for my greater good, through this life. And I did it. It went well. And honestly, my wife and I have, even though there's still some troubles, individually we're better than ever. And spiritually, we're better than ever. Happiness-wise, I'm confident we're better than ever. And our relationship, even though strained because of outside sources, is better than ever. I mean, literally better than over a decade ago when we first met in November of 2010. I've never loved her as much as I do now. I know I'm going to love her more tomorrow and the day after that. And I've never been so selfless with that love. And I've never been so more concerned about her happiness and well-being than my side of it. There are things that can be done and situations to go through and stuff like that can make it better for both of us, sure. But we both need to be ready individually for those things to happen. And yeah. So that's pretty much the end of this one. Do you receive spiritual communication? Are you aware that you're receiving spiritual communication? I firmly believe everybody does, because everybody has a higher self, and higher self always is looking out for your higher good, right? Open up to it. Communicate with it. You might be surprised. Just confirm that the source you're getting it from is cohesive with the path and the life you want to live. It's a big deal. If you're just going about it willy-nilly, it seems more likely that it's from a negative source, fueling your third density experience. So 3 tips, right? Have a deeply held core belief. Challenge the communication. And be ready for answers that you may not want to hear because they're for your greater good when it's from a source that you match with. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, everybody in cars. And we'll see you tomorrow, Seekers. Much love.